Welcome back, everyone, and glad to see you here. Today on Kaspi Didnt in your online English lesson, we will be talking about Unit 7 Grammar, Past Questions, for all of you in the 6th grade. In our last video, we talked about the past simple in both the positive sentences and the negative sentences. For the past simple in a positive sentence, most of the verbs we simply add ed. Walk, walked. Listen, listened. Some verbs that end in y, like play, you also add ed. But some verbs like study, you change the y into an I and then you add ed. Other verbs like prefer, you add an extra letter before you add ed. Verbs like create and imagine, you just add a d. Now, if you remember, there are also many verbs that change differently when you go from the present to the past. Do, did, go, went, take, took. Yesterday, I walked to school. I went to school 3 weeks ago. In the negative form, you must have didn't. You need didn't in all of your negative sentences talking about the past. Yesterday, I didn't walk to school. I didn't go to school 3 weeks ago. In the negative sentences of the past, you do not need to change the verb, but you only need to have didn't. And don't forget, the verb to be in the negative becomes was not and were not. In those sentences, you do not need didn't. Now, for past simple questions where the answer is yes or no, we have two ways of making these sentences. The first one is did and didn't. In this table here, you see that did and didn't is the very first word in the sentence. Did I do that? Didn't you create your avatar? Did she win the game? Did we finish the lesson? Did you take those books? Didn't they agree? After did or didn't, you need the subject, and then you need the verb and the object. Here, in the questions, you do not change the verb, but you must have did or didn't as the very first word in your question. Another way we can make a question in the past where the answer is yes or no is using was, wasn't, were, and weren't. Here in this table, was I tired? Were you fat? Wasn't he at school? Weren't we here? Were you slim? Were they in the Olympics? In these questions, was, wasn't, were, and weren't is the very first word in your question. After that, there are no verbs that change. You do not need to add ed to any of the verbs. These are the two ways where you can use the past to ask a question where the answer is yes or no. Another way to ask a question in the past when you use did and didn't is to have another word before did and didn't. Here is when you use the question words. In the table below, you see, when did I wake up? I woke up at 6:30 in the morning. Where did you come from? How did he get here? Which didn't we like? We didn't like anything. What time did you sleep? Why didn't they listen? Here, when you use did and didn't in the question, but it's not the first word, you need a question word before it, and after that, the subject and the verb. These verbs, you do not need to add ed in the question. The last way to make a past simple question using was, were, when it's not the first word in the question, is again, when you use the question words. For example, how and why, which, and the others. The first one, when was I here? Where were you yesterday? I was at home yesterday. How was he in school? Which were we like? What time were you at home? Why weren't they good? Because they were always bad. In these questions here, remember, was goes with I, he, she, and it. Were and weren't go with you, we, and they. So let's check your understanding. In the example here, you see where, you, and you see learn, English. The question, where did you learn English? The answer, I learned English in school. Number 1, you, like, the online lesson today? Because there is no question word, you must use did, didn't, was, wasn't, were, or weren't. The answer, did you like the online lesson today? The answer, no, I didn't like the lesson. Number 2, what you think about the game on TV? We see what is the question word, so we know the answer is not a yes or no question. What did you think about the game on TV? The answer, I thought it was interesting. Number 3, you be short when you were a child. Here, there is no question word, so we must use did, didn't, was, wasn't, were, or weren't. Were you short when you were a child? Yes, I was only 100 centimeters. Because of did and were as the first word in the question, we know that the answer is always yes or no. Number 4, you have a mustache when you were a child? The question is, did you have a mustache when you were a child? And the answer, yes, I did. Or, yes, I had a mustache. Now for some practice. In the comment section below, I want you to ask me 3 questions about my past, using some of the different ways that you learned today about how to make questions. They can be yes/no questions, or you can use question words like when or where or why. But remember, you must use the past. So did, didn't, was, wasn't, were, and weren't must be in your questions. And remember, in these past questions, the verb does not change, so you do not need to add ed. That is all the time that we have today. Hopefully, you learn more about how to make questions in the past, using did, didn't, was, wasn't, were, and weren't. Thank you very much for your time and participation, and I hope to see you next time.